One of the biggest misconceptions that I hear about myself is that I'm emotionless, or more specifically, lack empathy towards others. This statement couldn't be far from the truth, but I can see why some would jump to that conclusion because I often talk about building mental toughness or callousing one's mind. Not because I believe that human beings shouldn't be allowed to show emotion, but because I realize if gone unchecked, your emotion will consume you and cloud your best judgment. Hi, my name is Gothix, and today we're getting our emotions in check. These past few months have been a very stressful time for everyone. People are losing friends over political differences, cities are burning because of justice, and let's not forget the folks that are so fearful of getting sick, they've become comfortable demonizing others as pathogens for having questions about the pandemic. These behaviors are not typical of someone who's a rational thinker, but rather someone who's allowing their emotion to do the thinking for them. Have you ever had an argument with a significant other only to later apologize for saying something hurtful because you were upset at that moment? Or how about those who have gone on alcohol binges or maxed out their credit card because they're trying to fill a void after dealing with a breakup or losing a job? So if we take these examples and put them alongside current social issues, then you might understand why I'm so critical about getting your emotions in check. Because if your anger prompts you to call a friend mean things during an argument, then we have to assume you're equally as capable of calling someone a Nazi or a racist simply because their opinion upsets you. And if your response to feeling sad after a breakup is to blow your money on an unnecessary purchase or mask the pain with a 40 ounce or two, then it's no surprise why BLM was able to raise millions of dollars while overlooking criminal behavior by pulling on the heartstrings of America. Letting your emotions consume you can cloud your best judgment, making it easier for you to excuse bad behavior because, well, you're upset. Kinda like the peaceful protesters who excused looting because, don't worry, the companies have insurance, or better yet, looting is a form of reparations. Or how about those who claim to be against racism, but in the same breath will refer to a black conservative as a sellout or a grifter because they have a preconceived opinion that a black person is supposed to think or behave in a specific way. The reality is, while COVID lockdowns have done a great job keeping people isolated, they've also created the perfect environment to be alone with your thoughts. For some, that could mean becoming obsessed or invested in whatever headline comes across your screen. And for others, like myself, it gives me an opportunity to research and ask questions. And while it's not wrong for being invested in whatever's on the news, it's pointless if you're not following it up with research beyond the confines of your echo chamber. Because I know, and the media knows, that emotional people are easily manipulated people. So for this video, I'm going to get into some specifics. So while some of you may not like the information I'm about to present, I want you to know that I gain nothing by lying to you. As much as my critics believe I'm selling out and purposefully making divisive comments at the thought of a YouTube paycheck, trust me when I say there is no amount of money that I'd accept to be voluntarily abused by strangers. My goal is to get people back to judging others on the content of their character rather than who they voted for. And in the words of the great Jordan Peterson, in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. So yeah, the bullying kinda comes with the territory, I guess. Most of the abuse and harassment that I've received over the past year has come from one side of the political spectrum, the left. And I often talk about how I lost 90% of my friends because instead of having these types of conversations, they instead concluded that the reason I voted for Orange Man is because I'm against human rights or support white supremacy. In other words, they let their emotions cloud their ability to ask questions. Between people losing friends and going through divorces or getting fired over the election, I couldn't help but wonder if political ideology had any correlation to the behaviors that I previously mentioned. And from what I've researched, I have reason to believe it does. First of all, I do not claim to be a scientist or a psychologist. I'm just a chick on YouTube that knows how to use a search engine, and I implore all of you to use one as well. According to a study published in 2013, a large body of research suggests that liberals and conservatives differ on important psychological characteristics. For example, Conservatives demonstrate stronger attitudinal reactions to situations of threat and conflict, and in the contrast, liberals tend to seek out novelty and uncertainty. So if I were to connect a scenario to this statement, I would say that more liberals might be for open borders because they want to help people who seek refuge in America, while conservatives might oppose open borders because it could exacerbate the current human trafficking problem. The study goes on to suggest that Republicans and Democrats differ in the neural mechanisms activated while performing risk-taking tasks. Republicans more strongly activate their brain's right amygdala. I can't even pronounce that. Republicans more strongly activate the part of their brain which plays a role in conditioning the individual to avoid fear-inducing stimuli and, more importantly, to assess threats in their environment. While Democrats, on the other hand, have higher activity in the portion of their brain that's associated with perceptions of internal physiological states. So again, if I were to make an example out of this, it would be like Cubans voting for Trump because they already escaped socialism, while someone like this would conclude that Cubans voted for Trump because they're trying to act white. One is assessing the risk based on policy or lived experiences dealing with socialism, while the other is making assumptions about someone's intentions by voting for Trump. It's worth mentioning that while I found several studies that have very consistent findings, obviously there are different variables to take into consideration. As often as I talk about how much vitriol I've received from the left, I know a few leftists that are very kind and considerate, just like I've encountered some folks on the right that are batshit crazy. That said, this research is still something to take into consideration. Because just like anything where you notice a consistent pattern, you have to start asking why. If 9 out of 10 leftists call me names for voicing a difference in opinion, compared to 9 out of 10 conservatives who are open to having a civil conversation, then I have to consider what the common denominator is for me to consistently get this type of response. For example, it's almost like the pronouns in bio stereotype. If I receive hostile comments or have conversations shut down by people on Twitter, and 80% of the time those interactions come from folks who have pronouns in their bio, I can't help but wonder if political ideology has anything to do with that behavior, because the concept of pronouns is something that's widely promoted on the left. This brings us to a survey report done in 2017, which shows that 58% of the 2,300 Americans surveyed believe that the political climate prevents them from saying what they believe. But what I found interesting about this survey was the breakdown of political ideology. According to the report, 76% of strong conservatives are afraid to voice their beliefs due to the political climate, compared to only 30% for strong liberals. To take it a step further, 87% of strong conservatives believe that political correctness shuts down necessary discussions, as I would also agree, while only 32% of strong liberals would agree with that statement. Now, if any of this research is accurate, we have to assume that other people have access to this information as well. So with that in mind, what's preventing left-wing concepts like political correctness from shutting down conversations that could potentially shelter you from the truth? What's stopping politicians from exploiting your emotions in order to keep them in power? And what's stopping the media from pumping propaganda onto your screen, hoping to prey on your emotions in order to make you believe a false narrative? You are the very thing preventing that from happening. Your willingness to have uncomfortable conversations with people you disagree with, your desire to ask more questions, your ability to self-reflect and remain calm when you hear an opinion that you don't like. And most importantly, your understanding that while it's okay to feel emotion, there will always be someone ready to exploit them.
I was trying to do some research on like the Asian hate, like the people are getting attacked or whatever. A bunch of black men that have been attacking Asian. So I'm like, what are you doing? Like, we're trying to like help like with the BLM, and like you're gonna like, I mean, it's individuals, it's not a people, you know. That's not good. The optics of that are not good. These little things like that are enough to set back movements, you know. Because the far left will start to latch on and create a story of like criminalizing an entire people, you know, just easier headlines that way, I guess.
Wait, but is it normal for the media to like, so say there's a white shooter, black shooter, which one are we gonna, you know, like?
Yeah, for the longest while, like, the story was like, people were like lapping up that it was like, you know, white guys for like so long. I haven't seen anything about focusing on the color of people's skin that aren't white. They just aren't saying anything. You know what I mean? They're just not. All of a sudden, that story loses a little steam, and they just like leave it be.
Why?
I don't know. I think it's got to be trends, like what people will latch onto. You know?
Or you're telling Michelle, you're telling me, or you're saying like how media is the greatest weapon. Where were you gonna go with that?
I mean, it's just propaganda. Like, you can really. Sorry, my chime just went off.
What do you mean by propaganda?
Like, you can shape an entire people's perception about anything on how you do it, right? Like,
How do you do that?
just by like forcing the story to help like your platform. You know, like you can all of a sudden say like coal is the future of like energy. Well, that could be propaganda because like who owns the company might have stake in like coal mining. So like Trump getting blasted all over, like constant feeds of like Twitter and Fox giving him a platform is what fueled that fire, you know.